an object that had always fascinated his family. The watch was said to have a special power. However, there were also warnings about its use. One night, after a few drinks with friends, he decided to try the watch out. The watch shone brightly under the light, and as he turned it, a strange feeling came over him. He whispered, feeling foolish, speaking to an object. Suddenly, the hand of the watch began to spin uncontrollably, and an enveloping light surrounded him. Fernando felt dizzy, and in an instant, he found himself in an unfamiliar place. He was in a dark room, lit only by the light of a flickering lamp. On the wall were photographs of people with data written on them. Confused, he began to examine the pictures and realized were friends or acquaintances. A shiver ran through his body as he noticed that the moments he thought were innocent. But there was something else. Behind each photograph there was a written word. "What's going on?" he asked out loud. Then the clock began to ring, and each chime resonated loudly. At the same time, Fernando felt a tug on his mind. He began to remember details about his friends that he had ignored, things he had preferred not to see. One photo in particular caught his attention. It was that of his best friend, Javier. Fernando's heart sank. Thinking about all the times he had defended him, he felt betrayed. He couldn't let that go unnoticed. Fernando decided to confront Javier. The next day, he met Javier at a cafe. The conversation started out trivial. "Javier, there's something I need to ask you," he said, sensing the tension in the air. Javier looked at him curiously, as if he already knew something was wrong. Fernando took a deep breath, remembering the word he'd seen on the watch. "Why are there things you haven't told me about our friendship, about the things you've done?" Javier's expression turned serious, and Fernando noticed how his friend tensed in his seat. "What do you mean?" "It showed me the truth," Fernando continued, feeling like he couldn't turn back. "Are you a traitor?" "I did bad things, Fernando. Things I regret, but I never thought you'd find out." Fernando felt pain wash over him. His best friend, the person he trusted the most, wasn't who he said he was. To save him from himself, "You don't have to go down this path," he said. "There's time to fix things." But before Javier could answer, his phone rang. He looked at the screen and paled. "It can't be," he muttered. And Fernando sensed that something was very wrong. Javier jumped up from the table, his face pale. "I have to go." Fernando felt caught in a confusion of emotions. He decided to follow Javier. As he left the cafe, he saw his friend heading towards a dark alley. With his heart pounding, Fernando ran after him. Upon reaching the alley, he found him standing, surrounded by shadowy figures. They were dangerous-looking men, and the tension in the air was palpable. One of the men said, his voice deep and menacing. Fernando felt helpless as he saw his friend cornered. Without thinking, he stepped between them, raising his hands in surrender. "Wait, there's no need to do this," he shouted, his voice echoing in the alley. "Yes, it is. Javier is my friend. I don't want him to get hurt," he replied, feeling like he was fighting back a torrent of fear. Javier looked at him, surprised. However, the situation became even more dangerous when the tall man approached Fernando. "Dude, you don't know what you've gotten yourself into." At that instant, Fernando's watch began to vibrate in his pocket. "Do you have the watch?" Javier asked, and Fernando nodded. "Yes, but now is not the time." The tall man realizing they were losing time, signaled to his men. Fernando felt the danger coming ever closer. "I'm willing to negotiate." "What are you doing?" he whispered. "Trust me." He decided to use that to his advantage. "I know Javier has debts, but I can help him pay them off. Just let us out of here and we'll talk about how to do it." The tall man looked at him, considering the offer. "How much do you have?" "I promise I can get it." After a tense silence, the tall man nodded, but not without a warning. "You have 24 hours. With that, the men turned and walked away, leaving Fernando and Javier shivering in the alley. "What did you do?" "Now we have to act fast." They both knew they were at a dead end, and the pressure was mounting. Fernando remembered the truths he had discovered about Javier. "Who are they? How can you get the money?" he asked. Not only did they need to get out of this situation, but they also had to solve the problems that had brought them here. In the next few hours, they both got to work. Fernando contacted other friends, trying to gather the money. Javier, for his part, decided to talk to people in the world he had been trying to escape from. As the hours passed, the tension increased, and they both felt the pressure of time. When they finally managed to gather the necessary money, but also rebuilding their friendship, determined to confront the men who had threatened them. With the money in hand, Fernando felt a mix of fear and determination. "Here is the money you owe," he said, extending his hand with the bills. The tall man took the money, examining it. His expression changed when he realized there was not enough. "What is this?" "It is not enough to free Javier from his debts," Fernando replied. Feeling cold, sweat began to fall down his forehead. "No, this does not end here," the man said, pointing at his henchman. On impulse, he remembered the watch and its power. With a quick gesture, he pulled it out of his pocket. "If you hurt me, you won't just lose Javier, you'll lose everyone," he said, trying to convince them. The tall man paused, his eyes narrowed, as if he sensed there was something real in his words. "What are you implying?" he asked. Fernando decided to take a chance. "I could show you the truth behind your actions, but I need your permission." The tension in the air was palpable, and after a moment of silence, Fernando held the watch in front of them. Visions began to appear: the broken families, the fear they had caused. The men froze, and Fernando felt the atmosphere grow heavier. "See, you can't escape what you've done," he said. "Enough," he shouted, raising his hands in surrender. "We don't want any more trouble." Fernando, still feeling his pulse racing, decided it was time to end this. There is a different path, one that doesn't involve fear or violence. The men looked at each other, and after a tense silence, they nodded. Fernando and Javier were able to escape the situation, but not without the scars of the experience.